Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. So, I just saw a question from one of my favorite commenters, always very nice, Grant, who was asking me a question about recording on cassette tapes. And it made me go, oh my God, yeah, I can't try to write this out. I have to explain it. And I got all excited and ran in here to grab my cassette tapes. And while I was doing that, I knocked over my bonsai tree. And so now all the little bits are here and the tree's crooked. So while I explain it, I might clean this up. But the question he asked that I thought, that is so funny because I haven't thought about it in so long. And just thinking about it was like a wave of nostalgia. So this is to explain how life was in the olden days to the young people. But for anyone of you who's like Gen X or, about earlier, you're going to be like, oh, I remember doing this. So the question was, how did you used to make a mixtape? And in a video about come look at my cassette tape collection, I showed some mixtapes that I had that were, by the way, if you're my age, you'll laugh that remember these. Oh, here it is. Here's one that I hadn't yet used. It's probably worth $1 million. And it's funny because I would say most of these particular mixtapes right here, because they're entire albums, these were recorded off of record albums. But it's funny that some of them. Okay, first off, let me go back for a minute. When I was really young, like in the 70s, what we had at our house, and I wish I had one here. My son has it actually because it is still around. But it would have like, I feel like maybe there's a little speaker here, and then here's where the cassette tape goes, and then there are buttons here, and it was like play, record. I don't remember what they looked like anymore. And then like fast forward and stop. I don't know. And as kids, the most fun thing was to, have all your friends over and you'd hit record and play and you would make, shows. Like we would do full on talk shows or, joke, mostly comedy. We were big into comedy. And so you'd record it and then listen to it back, and it was all fun. And I wish that I still had those cassette tapes. I'm sure they were recorded over because, you only had one cassette tape. So you'd have to record over it. But so that's the beginning. And then at some point, my real quick, the other comment I got was on the video I just posted with coins. I thought at the end of the video, my power went out and everything shut off. So to me, it looked like everything shut off. I uploaded that video. I had no idea that there is a thunder crash and then me screaming at the end. And I am so sorry. I might try to go into the editor and see if I can figure out how to cut that out. I'm so sorry. I was like, what? People were commenting they were scared. And I was like, wait, what did I do? And I realized it's so loud. I'm so sorry. Anyway, but then at some point, my parents got a record player. And it was in like when you walked up our steps, there was I don't know what you call it, like a hall. And that's where we had a bathroom here. Trying to remember. And then my bedroom was here. And the very scary steps up to the attic that I told you guys about, that was in my bedroom. And here's my door. And I put basically a chair and then my bed in front of that attic door because the monsters were up there. And the steps were here. And here's my sister's room. Well, there's a little bit of hallway. That's right. There's a little bit of hallway here. I guess that's where the shower is, probably for the bathroom. And then my sister's room was here. And then my brother's room was over here. Anyway, okay, so in this hallway, my parents got a record player with these giant speakers, and they used to play record albums, and there was like a railing that kind of looked over the steps, turned, and came down this way. It was like, you go up and you go up. And they would dance to the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. They'd dance up here. And then we used to do like, me or my sister would stand up here and pretend to be the singer, and you'd sit on the steps and watch, they say. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Okay, so the stereo is here, and the stereo that they bought had a record player on top. So here's your record player. I'm not going to be able to draw this. This is ridiculous. And then here is as I recall, here is the radio, and it had AM and FM, so that was nice. And it had the big knob. And then below that, it had, I can't exactly remember if it did have 2 cassettes. It may have, or if it just had 1. I don't know if this one had 2 or if that came later. And then it had a glass cabinet, and that's where you keep all the record albums. Now, I should remember this because my parents still have this exact one in their basement. And then here are the speakers. They were big. Okay. So what you could do if you had a record album, if you owned the album, you could put the album on, and as soon as it starts, you hit record. And then you'd record the album onto a cassette tape. And then when it's finished, you flip the cassette tape over and you record the other side on the other side of the cassette tape. That's one thing you could do. If you had a double cassette player, which not everybody had, and I'm not even sure we had this, I don't remember, then you could put one cassette in one side and the other cassette in the other side, and you'd press play and record, and it would record. You'd have to let it play out, just play through the whole thing. Those were 2 things. But, we were kids. We didn't have the money to go buy all the cassettes. I mean, cassettes were the same price as a record album, and there weren't CDs yet. This is before CDs. So what you would do is you'd turn on the FM radio, and in Detroit it was WRIF, or there was a station called WHYT Hot Hits, and they played the same 10 songs basically on repeat, on a loop. So you'd always know exactly. It would be like, Who Can It Be Now? And then Hey Mickey, and they were in order. And you knew exactly what the order was. So if there was a song you loved, now it would never be off WHYT because you would be so burnt out on those songs. So you listen like Wheels or WRIF, one of those, and they were more random. So you'd listen and hope, knowing that your song's like a hit song, it's going to come up. So you'd have to just sit there and listen. And the way radio worked back then was the DJ would start to introduce the song, and sometimes they'd give you a hint in their introduction to what the song's going to be. And you'd be like, oh my God, it's going to be Sticks or whatever, you're ready to go. So you got your finger on the record. Well, on purpose, the DJs would talk over the very beginning of the song because they didn't want you to be able to record them. I think this is why. So that you'd have to buy them. And the other thing they'd sometimes do is mid-song, they would say like, WRIF, like kind of have that in there mid-song so that the other radio station, if they got like a pre-release, they didn't want the other radio stations to be able to record it and start playing it on their station. It's true. I heard it from a DJ. But So sometimes you'd have one of these and it would start off with like, and this is Casey Kasem and this is number 10. And then it would start and then you'd record the song and then okay. And then you'd wait. Even all your friends would be sitting around waiting for the next song. That was the one you wanted on your hit. It was kind of crazy. Like now I think about it, but it was also exciting and fun. And, you know, if you made a mixtape for somebody where you spent the time taking songs off of different records and cassettes and the radio, that meant something. You know, like if somebody makes you a mixtape and you know they had to use 4 different albums and a cassette and record one song and then stop it and get it just right and then do the next one and get one off the radio, they took some time for you. That means something. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I just thought that question made me go, oh my gosh, that's so funny, because that is such a, like, a clear and very teenage memory for me, you know what I mean? Like, and I remember before, you know, there were cassette tapes. They were just record albums. You couldn't do that. Well, not before there were cassette tapes. Actually, that's bringing up another memory. You know how I told you there used to be just the cassette tape that our friends, we'd all do that? We used to put that microphone by the speaker to record songs. But because it was stereo, if you held it by one speaker, you'd kind of sometimes, like with Led Zeppelin, only get half of it. Like you wouldn't get in stereo. You know what I'm saying? Please stay. I know this thing has fallen apart so much I don't even know how to fix it anymore. Yeah, that's so funny. I have such clear memories of having mixtapes with Casey Kasem. Was a guy who used to do the top 40 countdown, and I think they play like reruns of it. I heard that not that long ago, and I was like, oh, that's fun. But and everybody, it would be on Sunday mornings. And so on the way to church, my dad would have it on the car radio. And then we'd go into church. And by the time they'd start at, I guess it was top 40, so probably 40. And by the time church was over, you're at like I feel like you'd be at like number 20. And then we'd go have lunch. And by the time you got home, you'd be like in the top 10. And so then you'd run to get your cassette because you knew like Duran Duran's going to be in there and Michael Jackson's probably going to be in there. That's funny. But yeah, I remember having some cassettes where you definitely have the DJ talking over it and you'd be like, oh man, he talked over his part of the song. But it didn't matter. Oh, shucks. Anyway, that's all I can remember. I mean, I'm sure there's more to that. I should have called my sister. She has better memory than me sometimes. But if you guys remember doing that, I do miss having really good DJs. So there used to be like DJs who could, like, they'd make little, like, not, what's the word? Like jokes almost that would segue into a song. It was fun. They were good at it. It was fun. And now I feel like there's so much like AI DJs and they're just not that funny. All right, good. Got that semi fixed. Yeah, so if you're curious, I did make a video with my cassettes. This is Violent Femmes, Lloyd Cole. I'm afraid to share that video because for some unknown reason, I remember when it posted, it lost me a bunch of followers. And I'm not, is it because like Ozzy Osbourne's in here? I don't know. I was like, what did I have? I have Adamant. I have REM and Squeeze. I have Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, Violent Femmes, Led Zeppelin, White Snake, which is kind of weird, George Harrison. This one's a weird one. That's definitely my handwriting. but I had a bunch of others. I picked this up today, you guys. I'm going to look through it a little bit. Maybe today. I'm not sure if I'll have time because I got to go make dinner. So, and here's my Walkman. I remember the Walkman didn't have a, boy, I don't know if this is right, but my memory is there's no microphone hook on here, place to plug it in. And at some point, I realized if you plug your microphone into the speaker, then it'll record. No, that's not right, because you wouldn't be able to record. I guess I just realized at some point that any speaker plugged into a microphone jack is a microphone. And nobody ever believed me. I was like, no, it is. And I don't know why. I don't know where I figured that out. I'm not sure. And I remember being with friends and going, just plug your speaker in and talk into it. And it would work every time. They were like, what? That's crazy. But it must not be this because there's no record. Anyway. All right, guys. I don't know. That was a weird one.